All right, let's dive into this case, huh? This one's a dark one. Back in 2005 and 2006, in Phoenix, Arizona, a real chilling case. Random shootings, arsons, you name it. It was Dale Hausner and Samuel Dieteman.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is at first, the police thought they were dealing with like two separate
Oh,
criminals.
wow.
Can you imagine? Two totally different guys just like causing chaos.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Two boogeymen instead of one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a nightmare. And then they figured out it was actually Hausner and Dietman. But, the weird thing is Hausner, he wasn't like some creepy loner. He had a job and a hobby.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was an airport custodian during the day. And then, get this, he was a boxing photographer.
Wow.
He even took pictures of Mike Tyson. It's crazy, right?
It's hard to imagine. Like, how can someone, have this normal life and then go out and do these horrible
It's
things?
like a double life. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder what goes on in someone's head like that.
It's really disturbing. So let's get into what they actually did. Their crime spree, I guess you could call it. It lasted from May 2005 to July 2006.
Right.
And they were targeting, well, everyone, it seemed like, and animals, too.
Yeah, they were like shooting at people,
Hmm.
setting fires,
Really?
just wreaking havoc. And I think, you can't underestimate the role of meth in all of this.
Oh, yeah.
They were both heavy users.
Yeah.
And that probably explains why it seems so random.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, their judgment was impaired. Yeah.
Absolutely. And meth can make people, well, incredibly violent and unpredictable.
So it's like anyone could have been a target.
Exactly.
That's terrifying. So how many people did they actually kill?
Well, they were convicted of murdering 6 people. David Estrada, Nathaniel Schaffner, Jose Ortiz, Marco Carrillo, Claudia Gutierrez Cruz, and Robin Blasnak.
And they suspect there were more, right?
Yeah, they think they might have also killed Tony Mendez
Yeah.
and Reginald Remillard back in 2005.
Wow. And on top of all that, they were setting these massive fires, too.
Right, like huge fires at Walmart stores.
Why Walmart?
Who knows? Maybe it was just, a symbol of something to them. But those fires caused millions of dollars in damage.
It must have been a crazy time to live in Phoenix.
Yes.
Always looking over your shoulder, wondering what they were going to do next.
Yeah, it was like living in a horror movie. Nobody knew who would be next.
So now let's talk about the guys themselves. Hausner, like we said, he seemed normal on the outside, had a job, a hobby even.
Right.
And then you have Dieteman, who he had a criminal history, right?
Yeah, he had some petty crimes in his past. And he had just moved to Arizona from Minnesota.
So how did these two guys, who seem so different, end up together and end up doing these things?
That's a good question.
Mm.
I mean, you have Hausner, a steady job. He was photographing Mike Tyson. And then Dietman, kind of a drifter.
Right.
And somehow they find each other. And it's like this dark connection.
What do you think brought them together?
I don't know. Maybe they were both like outsiders in a way,
Uh,
looking for, I don't know, some kind of like twisted belonging.
and the Mike Tyson connection is really strange.
Oh, yeah.
I read that Tyson said Hausner was a nice guy. It's just so hard to believe.
It's like, how can you judge someone based on how they seem on the surface?
Yeah.
You could be hiding all kinds of darkness.
It's really scary. But luckily, they didn't get away with it forever.
Yeah. Someone finally tipped off the police.
Oh, who was that?
It was a friend of Diamond's, a guy named Ron Horton. He knew about, what Diamond was up to, but he wasn't sure if he was serious at first.
Oh, wow.
Then, after Robin Blasnik was killed, I think it hit him, that he could have maybe prevented it. So he went to the police.
It must have been a tough decision for him.
Yeah, to live with that knowledge that he might have been able to stop it sooner. But he did the right thing.
He did. And it finally put an end to their reign of terror. I can't imagine the relief people in Phoenix must have felt.
Oh, yeah. To finally be able to breathe again. To not have to worry about who would be next.
It must have been a huge weight lifted off their shoulders. But, the story doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't. That was just the beginning of a long road to justice. I mean, their arrest was huge news, right? Everyone was talking about it.
Oh, yeah, I bet. It was all over the news, right?
Totally. I mean, this case had been going on for so long, and then suddenly, boom, they're caught.
It's like something out of a movie. So what happened at the trial?
Well, they charged Hausner with, everything. 88 charges in total.
Wow, 88.
Yeah, murder, attempted murder, arson. They even threw in animal cruelty. It was a big deal.
Makes sense, I guess, given everything they did.
Oh, for sure. It was one of the biggest trials in Arizona history.
What was the verdict?
Guilty on 80 of the 88 charges. including 6 of the murders.
Wow. So what happened to them? Did they get the death penalty?
Well, Hausner actually told his lawyers not to fight it. He said he wanted to die.
Really? Wow.
He claimed it was to help the victims' families heal. But it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, he wanted to control the narrative even after he was caught.
He even waived all of his appeals, right?
Ah, he did. He wanted it all over with as quickly as possible.
That's strange. So did he say anything, like, to the families?
He did. He made a statement before the jury. He apologized to some people, his family, I think. But then he started comparing himself to Charles Manson.
What? Charles Manson, the cult leader.
Yeah, it was pretty bizarre.
It sounds like he was trying to justify what he did and make it seem less horrible.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe he was just, I don't know, losing it.
It's hard to say.
Yeah. He may never really know what was going on in his head.
So did he actually get executed?
No. He died in prison in 2013. Suicide.
Oh, wow.
Overdose. Antidepressants.
That's a dark ending to a dark story.
It is. And it's a reminder that, these kinds of crimes, they have ripple effects.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not just the victims and their families who suffer. It's everyone involved.
That's true. I hadn't really thought about that.
And in this case, it's even more complicated because Hausner's brother, Jeff, was also involved.
Wait, what? His brother?
Yeah. He helped with some of the shootings. He got 25 years in prison.
Man, that's heavy. So this whole thing, it just tore their family apart.
Completely. And it left the whole community reeling. It takes a long time to heal from something like this, to rebuild trust, to feel safe again.
I can't imagine what those families went through.
Yeah. They're the ones who are truly serving a life sentence.
That's a good point. They have to live with the pain and the loss forever.
Exactly. And we have to remember that, there are real people behind all of this. People who lost their lives, people who are still grieving.
Absolutely. So going back to Hausner and Dieteman, why did they do it? What was their motive?
Honestly, it's hard to say for sure. Maybe it was the thrill of it, the power. Maybe it was the drugs.
Yeah, maybe it was a combination of all those things.
Probably. It's rarely just one thing, But the truth is, we may never fully understand what drives someone to do something like this. The human mind is a complex thing.
It is, but even though we might not understand it, we can still learn from it, right?
Absolutely. We can try to identify patterns, see if there are any warning signs.
So we can prevent something like this from happening again.
Exactly. We have to try to learn from these tragedies.
So what are some of those lessons? What can we take away from this case?
Well, I think it highlights how dangerous drugs can be, especially meth. It can turn people into, monsters.
Right. And it shows how important it is to be aware of what's going on around us.
Yeah, to pay attention to the people in our lives, to notice if someone's behavior changes, if they're struggling.
And to speak up if we see something that seems wrong.
Exactly.
Because you never know, you might just save a life.
You really might.
It's easy to focus on, the big picture,
Yeah.
the investigation, the trial, all that. But you're right, this is about people, real people who were hurt by these guys.
Yeah, and a lot of their victims, they were, already struggling.
What do you mean?
Like, a lot of them were homeless or addicted to drugs. People who, society doesn't always pay attention to.
That's awful. You think they, targeted them on purpose?
Maybe. It's possible. They figured nobody would notice or care as much.
Man, that's just messed up.
It is. And it makes you think,
Yeah.
about how we treat people who are different, people who are struggling.
Yeah. We forget they're human beings, too.
Exactly.
So what can we do about it? I mean, how do we start something like this from happening again?
Oh, I think it starts with, education,
Teaching kids to be kind to each other.
Yeah, that's part of it. But also, teaching them about empathy, about understanding people who are different from them.
And we have to talk about the things that cause violence, like poverty and mental illness.
Right. And we have to do more to help people who are struggling, give them opportunities, support systems.
It's a lot, it feels overwhelming.
It is. But we have to try.
You're right. We can't just give up.
Exactly.
This case, it's been a tough one to talk about, but I'm glad we did.
Me too. It's important to remember these things, to learn from them.
Yeah, and to never forget the victims.
Exactly.
So, to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. It's been heavy, but we hope you've learned something.
And remember, even though there's a lot of darkness in the world, there's still good out there.
There is, and we can all do our part to make things better. So, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.